The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Arcane Wonders, Game Toppers, Stay-at-Home Orders, and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy of the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Gateway City, St. Louis, Missouri, it's the Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board, card, and occasionally role-playing games. Today, the Dukes review Paladins of the West Kingdom by Shem Phillips. Then they discuss how COVID-19 has affected the board gaming community and the show. And now, the Dukes of Dice.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex.
And this is episode 222, Shut-ins of the Stressed Kingdom. That name title thanks to... Name title? Episode title. Thanks to...
Yeah, it's a name title, too, I guess.
All right.
The title of the name.
Thanks to Jimmy DM90 for Shut-ins of the Stressed Kingdom. Excellent naming skills there, Jimmy. Makes perfect sense. Obviously, we're talking about being shut-ins here with all of the stay-at-home orders and social distancing, etc. Plus, we're talking about one of the blanks of the Blank Kingdom games this episode. So great job, Jimmy. We get all of our help naming our episodes because we're not creative enough from our Board Game Geek Guild number 2008. In fact, we have some fantastic runners-up, which we'll give you at the end of the episode.
Sean, I got a flashback moment for you.
Okay.
Let's try right now, because you made the claim we're not creative enough, on the fly. How would you name this episode? Because this is how we used to name the show in the very early days, was a minute before recording, looking at the topics, and then just, I don't know, spitballing until we found something that wasn't terrible, or was terrible, and what was it? Kanban Pun, I think was the low point for me, when that was the name.
Yeah.
So Sean, what is your episode title name, or name for title of this episode?
Oh, it's terrible. Okay, just on the spot.
Yeah.
How about Paladins of the Corona Kingdom? I don't know. It's terrible.
No.
That's just terrible.
Oh,
That's why we don't do this.
I was thinking about something about spreading or going viral. I don't know. Kickstarter gone viral, something like that.
What?
This was a Kickstarter game. Not that we're talking about Kickstarter.
Wow.
I don't know. It's not very good. Yours was better.
At least mine was on point. It wasn't good.
Yeah,
but it was on
better.
point.
Anyway, that's why we don't do it, and that's why we leave it up to the guild.
Yeah. I forgot about Kanban Pun. Yeah.
That was the low point. That was the point that probably started driving us towards the whole naming contest thing.
Oof.
Yeah, it wasn't good. It was literally like we were sitting around and we were like, oh, gotta come up with some sort of Kanban pun because we were reviewing Kanban. And then you're like, I don't know, let's just call the episode Kanban Pun. It's great, right? I was like, no, it's not great. And you're like, well, I think it's great, so we're going to do that. And we ultimately did that. And it was, yikes.
Rough. Very rough. Well, so for context right now, we are recording this on Saturday, March 28th. Our last recording was either on the 12th or the 14th. I can't remember of March. I can't remember if we did a Thursday or a Saturday recording. And our last recording, things were really starting to kind of ramp up, but nothing super crazy at that point. I think you had mentioned like you had gone to the gym, and I was like, oh, okay, dude, that seems cool. But
you do you.
Yeah. But then obviously the 12th, 14th, that's kind of like the next couple days is when things really started ramping up here and everywhere, obviously in the US with COVID-19. Yesterday, we just got word from the governor that school is canceled for the rest of the school year. Well,
yikes.
Public school is. Chewy goes to a private school, and they're still not sure what they're going to do. They're still closed for another week or two, and they're kind of talking about, well, the order doesn't technically apply to us.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, so that's, I mean, just for context, that's where we are, because everything's been moving so quickly, right?
Yes.
Like, it just seems crazy how quickly things have progressed. And, you know, by the time people are listening to this, if they're listening to this on the drop day, 2 days from now, who knows? That's when the zombies could be roaming. So I, for one, greet our new zombie overlords.
Oh, boy. I do not, for the record, greet our new zombie overlords. I do know the reference, though. It's a good reference.
Oh, wait, it's welcome. It's welcome.
Whatever. I mean,
And it was,
I
and
knew what
it's
you were saying.
technically, I for one welcome our new alien overlords. It's Ken Brockman from The
No,
Simpsons.
it's ant. I thought it was ant overlords.
We'll have to. Well, let me get the fact check team on this.
Okay.
Anyway, how are you?
I'm fine. I'm fine. You mentioned things progressing crazy fast, and I was thinking back to where I was 2 weeks ago and where this whole thing was 2 weeks ago. My work had not gone remote yet, but on that Monday after the day the episode dropped, my work went fully remote. Then the Monday after that, the city's stay-at-home order went into effect. It was announced that previous Saturday. Abby was working that whole previous week, and then her company pretty much at gunpoint was forced to have her work remote. So we're working together at home. It's been wonderful, actually. I'm not even. I'm not even joking with that. It has actually been wonderful. We've worked out together a whole bunch. We've been playing a lot of Animal Crossing New Horizons, and I mean a lot. Sean, I can't tell you how, among the things I've been petty and upset about during this crisis, and maybe in my life, I have not been more upset about a petty thing than I was about Animal Crossing being delivered to me late. It was supposed to get here on that Friday, and it didn't get here until Monday. I flipped out on Amazon over that. And it's just not something I typically do. And for some reason, it was important enough to do that. Abby's digging that game. I'm digging that game. But yeah, I mean, we've seen in St. Louis, restaurants go from open to offering takeout and curbside to just outright, we're closed. Yeah. Sorry, we can't do this. And it's just been so amazing to see how fast that's gone. The one glimmer for me, the one bright spot was I went to the grocery store twice during the in-between recordings. The first time, it looked like the apocalypse. I mean, everything was cleared out. No lettuce, no spinach, no fruits, veggie. I mean, it was just wiped out. This time I went yesterday. It was actually pretty well stocked.
Yeah.
There was plenty of stuff there. The only thing that they were low on or out of were things like toilet paper or paper products. That's it. Everything else was beautifully stocked, ready to go, no problem. Felt like it could have been normal except for all the store announcements talking about social distancing and the weird plexiglass stuff they put up to help protect the cashiers. So
that's good.
Yeah, it is good. And so there's been somewhat of an air of normalcy, but definitely there have been times in the past week or two where just the word weird keeps coming up, Sean. That's the only way to describe this, is it's just weird. There's weirdness in the air. So
yeah,
that's generally how I've been doing. Work isn't crazy affected. I did get hit with what should be temporary, a temporary 10% pay cut, which, considering I was a very recent hire, and if they had done any sort of a layoff, I was likely out the door. Considering that, I think I'm pretty okay with that. So I know there are a lot of businesses that have been hit way, 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 way harder. I would be shocked if there isn't at least one listener of ours who has lost their job as a result of this.
Oh, absolutely.
And I feel for you. It has to be the worst, because from a business owner's perspective, from an employee's perspective, it's nothing anyone did wrong. At least that was within that business owner's control. It's just something that has happened and is affecting us all. And, yeah, terrible.
Right.
Anyway, Sean, how have you been? I've heard you've been spending a lot of extra time in the Dutchy recording studio. You working on a side podcast?
I wish. No, yeah. So fortunately, I'm able to operate pretty much at full capacity. So I own a law firm, as many listeners will know, and we are all working from home. There's 5 of us, with the exception of our front desk person, who is still there because so much of her job requires her to be in the office, and it's fine. She's the only one there that definitely meets the requirements for what the governor wants us to do. Plus, as a law firm, we're technically considered an essential business, so we have some leeway. In theory, we could all be in the office and not be in violation of anything, but I don't think that's a good idea. And we've got it set up so that our work phones can just plug in here at home, and we can intercom each other, we can transfer calls. So it's not all that different in a lot of respects. So I'm pretty lucky that, at least for now, things are fairly normal. I'm able to pay my staff. It's good. It's really good, and I'm really fortunate in that sense. It has been incredibly stressful. I've been working way more, both as a function of just stuff that's going on, and also the nature of working from home. It's harder to kind of pull away. I've found it's harder to say, okay, I'm done for the day. And so I'll like make something to eat, and then I'll come back down, and I'm like, I really need some time off. So yeah, what I will say is I kind of mentioned this at the last time we recorded, how some COVID-19 related custody issues started to arise, and it has gone, I mean, just crazy since then. It's been a lot of my time dealing with that, in addition to all this other stuff, regular workload, things like that. And what was a little stressful, we do a lot of free consultations, and at any given time, we have 20 scheduled on the calendar.
Okay.
For the next like week or two, we have 20 consultations scheduled, between 20 and 24, and that's been pretty consistent. The last 2 months, we've done this whole new marketing blitz, which I talked about a while ago, which has been very successful. We have this whole new like lead tracking system, and like we're doing all this stuff to kind of track all this to see what's working and what's not. And within the last week or two, that 20 to 24 number has dropped to like 10. Oh. So we constantly have 10 scheduled. I put out we do these Facebook video ads. Normally I'm in a suit and I'm nicely coiffed and everything looks good and tight, Alex. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to do one from the basement. I'm kind of disheveled. I'm wearing like a t-shirt, but it's kind of real. And I'm like, hey, we're still open. We're still accepting new clients. We're even offering affordable payment plans while this whole thing is happening. So, I mean, we're definitely adjusting, and I have seen a little bit of an uptick. So we're okay for now. It's a question of what are things going to look like 2 months from now, 3 months from now, during this time period where our new hires or new retainers have kind of dropped off. So
yeah,
Chewy's at home. She what's nice is her school has been doing the remote sessions with her teacher, so she jumps on twice a day for a half hour, which is pretty cool. It's nice being home. I'm even considering, when all this is over with, maybe especially during the summer, working one day from home a week.
Okay. Nice.
Just so I could be around a little bit more. I don't know. It's been a tough time. I'm planning on working later today and tomorrow, Sunday. But again, I'm fortunate that I can do that. So,
Dukes of Diet update.
Oh boy. Let's see here. As of today, I am at 160, which is, I think I'd mentioned I was fluctuating between like not 160. Wow.
160. My eyebrows just went so high. No one can see this, but my eyebrows were like at the top of my forehead when you said 160.
Yeah, no, I'm at 260.
Did you chop off a leg or two? What
happened?
I
did. That's what it would have to be. Actually, probably both legs. So I had mentioned last time I was fluctuating between 255 and like 259. Earlier I hit 267, and I was like, holy cow. And it's the snacking. It's just brutal. That was also after a particularly like, we made tacos, which are normally actually pretty good depending on how you do them. But this was like ground beef tacos, and I totally skipped the portion control. I skipped measuring, and I just made a bunch of tacos. And yeah, so yeah, I'm back down to 260 at least. It's been rough. The at-home workouts have not been happening. It's hard to kind of find that time, especially because when I do go upstairs, Chewy wants to do stuff, and so I don't know. Something's got to give here. Nothing crazy, but yeah.
Bummer. Yeah, with the at-home workouts and food being relatively stable, last I weighed myself, I was 188. So I'm right in that same range, but I'm not necessarily looking to lose. I mean, I could lose a couple, but it wouldn't. Yeah, I'm fine with where I am right now.
And I think the hard part is just that when I'm at the office, I don't bring snacks with me, right? I don't buy snacks typically, and then I don't bring them with me to the office. They're just not there. I get hungry. I'm like, cool. I'll go fill up my bottle of water, and here it's just super easy. It's like, oh, well, I'll have a couple of these pretzels. Oh, I'll have a couple of these chips. Oh, hey, look at these Rice Krispie treats. These are pretty sweet. Literally. So yeah. Yeah. I will be going to the store later today.
Oh, good
to
luck.
Get some fresh vegetables.
Good
So
luck
I'm gonna make a frittata. I feel like a frittata.
Nice. I have some stuff to make some nice pork adobo tacos, which I intend to do at some point this weekend, probably.
Cool.
Anyway. All right. Well, as folks have been able to see, we've talked a whole bunch, not about board games, primarily because, based on the format of the show, and Sean, we'll talk about this, I think, even more in the discussion topic, but because COVID-19 has forced a change in lifestyle, it has forced a big change in the board gaming landscape. So figured we'd put recent plays kind of more in that area, news more in that area, and we've got a ton to talk about on a wide range of things there. I do want to mention, though, the online Castles of Burgundy tournament has gone really well. We had 22 people sign up. We've had games going on since I announced it at the last episode. It's been going really well, especially for me. I'm officially in the Final Four.
Ooh.
I had to knock out Sean Ramirez, attorney at law, in order to do so. In a very rude fashion. We were doing it while playing D&D. It was the first time playing D&D since the Mopsy incident that nearly destroyed both the Dukes of Dice and our D&D group. So yeah. But we got the game in. Sean was helplessly crushed underneath my heel and has been eliminated.
Well, that's a bit of a mischaracterization, but that's fine.
No, I think it was pretty accurate. So in any case, that's been a lot of fun. I anticipate doing a Targi tournament, another 2-player tournament on the guild. So keep your eyes peeled on the guild for that, for an announcement there. Probably when we're to the Final Four of the Castles tournament and folks are more free. I think we're going to try and do that. So if you haven't been on the guild before, and we had some first timers join in this tournament, please do so. I've had a lot of fun calling and talking with folks on the guild as I've been playing. You can play this asynchronous. It's Yukata. It works just fine that way. But I do like playing live. There's something cool about that and hopping on the phone and getting to meet members of the guild while we're in a time of not getting to meet a ton of people. So, yeah. Also had some interactions. I went to Jake and Danielle from Draft Mechanics. I went to their island in Animal Crossing, which was a ton of fun. And I feel like there was something else that belonged up here in this part of the show, Sean, but I can't think of what it might be. Nope, other than to say the format's changing. The format is changing and may change for future episodes. We'll see. We'll talk about this in the discussion topic, but at least for me, it has hampered my ability to get in new plays of stuff. I'm sure it's very similar for you too, Sean.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Cool. So instead of recent plays, instead of news, we're going to jump straight into the review. We'll see you after a word from our sponsors. Sean, here at the Dukes of Dice, we always do things on time. You need a Valentine's Day episode? We'll get that to you about a week or two after Valentine's Day. You need a Halloween episode? I hope you like November Halloween episodes. So we tend to like running a little bit late, Sean. And good news, Game Toppers LLC has your back if you are a procrastinator like the Dukes of Dice are. Because late pledges for Game Toppers still open, Sean. Still open if you want to get on board with the ultimate gaming accessory.
Absolutely, Alex. So if you head on over to GameToppersLLC.com, you will find a link to Late Pledge Now. Do it now. Why should someone pick up a Game Topper, Alex?
Maybe you have a space like I do. A 2-bedroom, 1-bath, bottom floor of a townhouse. And look, I don't have room for an entire game room as much as I'd love to. I've taken over as much of this space as I can. But this table kind of has to stay a table. But it doesn't always have to be a table. If I want to, I can convert it into a lovely gaming table using a Game Topper. And when I'm done with it, there's room in the basement for everything to stow away nice and neat. And Abby doesn't have to get too much on my case for always taking up our entire living space with games.
So yeah, if you're interested in setting up something like that, getting a high quality gaming experience, then head on over to GameToppersLLC.com.
Game Toppers, upgrading your gaming experience. Yes, I know, Rome wasn't built in a day, but you're still many, many days too late. Well, at least you would be for Foundations of Rome, the newest Kickstarter project from Arcane Wonders and designer Emerson Matsuuchi. That campaign is over, but you still have a chance to jump in and join if you want to be a builder that helps build up this great empire. Foundations of Rome is now available for late pledge. You can find that by going to the Kickstarter page and clicking on Late Pledge button up towards the top. That'll take you to Crowdox, where you can pledge your funds and still get a copy of this game that will not be in stores, a Kickstarter exclusive project, again, designed by Emerson Matsuuchi. So get in, don't delay, hop in now. Late pledge is still open for Foundations of Rome. That's Arcane Wonders, making strategic, competitive, and social games to enjoy with your friends. First, you built stuff. After designing and planning it. Then, you explored stuff. After also planning, and then going out and searching. Now, it's time to convert things. And a lot of other things after planning. We're talking about Paladins of the West Kingdom.
All right, Paladins of the West Kingdom is the latest in the Blank of the Blank Kingdom series, designed by Shem Phillips and S.J. McDonald. This is from, I'm guessing it's Garphil Games.
Yes.
Right? Because that's part of like Shem Phillips, the Phil. It's not Garphil Games.
Right, yeah.
Okay. And also Renegade Game Studios. So you alluded in your intro there, Alex, that there is Raiders of the North Sea. There is Architects of
the West Kingdom, I think.
The West Kingdom, right?
I think they're all West Kingdoms.
Oh, but there's the North Sea, right?
Yeah, no,
that's right.
But I'm thinking. So what I was alluding to is, I believe there was Explorers of the. Oh, that was Explorers of the North Sea.
Yeah.
Well, my intro doesn't make any sense. It's fine.
It's fine. It's not just Kingdom. There's also the North Sea. It's directional. Okay, let's just talk about this game. How about that? Let's just talk about this game. So in this game, you are a bunch of paladins doing paladin-y stuff, I suppose. You're trying to get some victory points. Whoever has the most victory points is the winner, because, hey, it's a mid-weight Euro. You're going to be doing this through a action selection, worker placement. I always get kind of hesitant to call it worker placement when you're placing workers on your own board, because there's there's no exclusion aspect necessarily, although there is a little bit of central board stuff in later rounds. So yeah, we'll call it worker placement. I'm probably being pedantic, but it's a worker placement game. So one of the things that you're trying to do throughout this game is to manage these three different attributes on these attribute tracks. There is your faith, there is your strength, and then there is your reputation. And at the end of the game, the higher you move each of these three tracks, the more endgame points you're going to score. But the level of each of these tracks is also going to have an effect on what actions you can take during the game. So there's a couple different phases of each round. First, you're going to be selecting from a hand draw which card that you're going to play. This is a simultaneous choice. You reveal this card pick is going to do a couple things for you. First, it's going to give you a couple of workers, and workers come in different colors. There are white neutral workers, there are red fighters, there are black clerics, there are purple criminals, there are blue merchants, and green scouts. So it's going to give you 2 workers. It's also going to give you temporary bumps in 2 of the tracks, and it's going to give you some sort of rule-breaking ability. So you're going to see 3 cards, you're going to pick one to use for that turn, you're going to pick one to go back to the top of your deck, and you're going to pick one to go to the bottom of your deck. Everyone's going to reveal those, and then in turn order, players are going to select another card from a central tableau that's going to give you 4 new workers, 4 additional workers. And at that point, you're pretty much ready to start the round. you're going to take turns taking an action, resolving that action, and then going to the next player until everyone has passed. Now, on your player board, you have a couple different spots that are going to give you different things. I'm not going to go over all of them, but basically, there are certain spots. There's Commission, Absolve, Fortify, Attack, Convert, and Garrison, which are all checking your attribute level in a certain one of those attributes, and then it's going to give you a bump in a different attribute. So, for example, if you want to absolve your sins, it's checking your reputation, and if you meet a certain reputation threshold, you're going to pay some amount of money, and you're going to remove one of these absolution tokens from your board to place it on another part of your board, which can give you some sort of bonus, which is also going to give you a bump in your faith. So basically, you have cleansed your sins, and you're by paying money, mind you, because it's medieval absolution, and yeah, you get that faith bonus. There's also attacking, where it's checking your strength, your military strength. There's a row of cards that are these enemies that you can either attack or convert. I think there's basically like Eastern Orthodox, there's Muslims, and there's what's the other one? They're like Gauls.
I think so. Yeah, something like that.
All right, so yeah, that's part of the theme there. But yeah, basically you can either attack them or convert them. Attacking them is going to be based off of your military strength. Converting is going to be based off of your faith attribute. And what's interesting is if you attack them, you're going to gain reputation. You've gained reputation for defeating your enemies. However, if you've converted them, it's going to help your military strength, because now there are extra tribes or whatever to help you fight, which is kind of interesting. You're also going to fortify, where you're able to place out buildings on a central track, which can give you some sort of bonus. Same with the garrison, kind of does a similar thing. Commission is where you're basically you're using your faith to gain reputation. You're sending out missionaries to that same central board to get bonuses. Kind of interesting thing there. Additionally, you can develop your board, where you can take workers to move a house on your board to cover up a worker spot to make it cheaper for you to use other spots during the game. There are some spots where you can get money, spots where you can get provisions, which is just another type of resource. There's also some other manipulation stuff that you can do. You can get townspeople to kind of help you out. Lots of different stuff that you can do in this game. What's interesting here is the worker placement is also kind of a recipe fulfillment, where certain spots require certain colors of workers. So, for example, if I want to attack, I need a green worker, which is a scout. I need a neutral worker, and then I need a red fighter. And you can cover up some of those spots to, like I said, to make it easier with that develop action. There's also an interesting aspect where every now and then you're going to get visited by the Inquisition. There is tax money. Sometimes you'll get money from the regular supply. Sometimes you'll get it from the tax supply. When that tax supply runs out, it's going to trigger the arrival of the Inquisition. And as the game has gone on, you may have acquired suspicion cards. Whenever you get one of the purple criminal workers, it's going to create some suspicion for you. And you'll get that card, which may actually give you some bonus money. And when the Inquisition arrives, whoever has the most suspicion is actually going to be given a debt. And a debt, I think we saw this in Architects as well. When you have debt, it's worth -3 points at the end of the game, unless you are able to take an action to basically pay off the debt, at which point you're going to get a victory point at the end of the game. There's a lot going on here. There's some other stuff with endgame scoring. There's some common goals that you can try and fulfill at the end of the game. But ultimately, that's kind of the long and the short of it in certain respects of Paladins of the West Kingdom.
Yeah. I think that's about as well as you can do with a rules overview.
Meh.
Nicely done, Sean. I never say enough how much I appreciate your rules overviews, because when I've had to do them, they are a mess. So it sounds like I'm being slightly sarcastic. I'm actually not. So good job on that rules overview.
Your tone is the same when you said you were enjoying working with Abby. And I think you were being authentic. So I will accept it in the manner in which it was offered, or in the spirit of which it was offered.
Awesome. You want to go first with first impressions?
Yeah, so I like all of the games in this series well enough for midweight Euros. I think we haven't. When's the last time we talked about a midweight Euro? Like really and truly, I can't remember.
Let me
or
think.
one that I've like really enjoyed.
Wingspan.
Yeah. So midweight Euros and I mean, that used to be my jam, right? Man, I couldn't get enough midweight Euros. And then at some point, like 2 years ago, I just, like they have to be really good. I played Lorenzo Il Magnifico the other week with Raquel, which is a midweight Euro that is just fantastic. There just has to be something there. And what sets that game apart from other midweight Euros, I don't know. What am I looking for in a midweight Euro? I'm not sure. I'll just know it when I see it. And with all of these games, I think that they are objectively very good games. Very good games. But they haven't had that big wow factor for me. And so like with Raiders of the North Sea, really cool worker placement twist where it's worker in, worker out. I really like that. With Architects of the West Kingdom, I really liked the you're placing workers out and what you're doing depends on how many other workers have been placed there. And there's this whole lassoing effect, like really cool concepts, like really cool. And then this one too, it's got a bit of that like recipe fulfillment thing that we've seen in games like say Orleans. So I knew I was going to like this. I suspected though that I probably wasn't going to be crazy about it because of the same game design DNA it shares with Shem Phillips' other games. Again, I think objectively they're good. And I think that if you are much hotter on midweight Euros than I am, then take everything that I may or may not say with a grain of salt.
Okay. Sean, let me tell you a story.
Oh boy.
This feels like we're jumping into the discussion topic a little early with this story. But a few weeks back, I got in my first play of this, and it was going to be between reviewing this or reviewing... What did we review last time, Sean?
Glenmore.
Yeah, it was going to be...
Glenmore is a midweight Euro that I like. But okay, anyway.
It was between this and between Glenmore 2 Chronicles. With the expectation that, hey, with game nights and going in person, it probably wouldn't be an issue to get another play or two in of Paladins in preparation for this. I know someone who has a copy. I had asked that person to borrow that copy and had gotten permission to borrow that copy. But with social distancing and stay-at-home stuff kicking in, this was not one I felt comfortable setting up and trying to get Abby to play. Glenmore 2, I knew the core mechanic of it was simple enough that it would be fine. This one, I think, was just going to be a shade too far.
Sure.
So I didn't want to try and force that on her, especially in these kinds of circumstances. So it just... The bottom line is, I wanted to get more plays in of this, and I did not. So I'm reviewing this off of one play. So a huge caveat there. I hope folks are somewhat understanding based off of the time and circumstance. This was not a margarita incident. This was not a Gaia project type of thing. This is just the sign of the times, so to speak. So thanks to Henry for offering to loan me this game, but bad on me for not going up and scooping it up and getting another play. It is what it is. I guess I could have played it solo too if I'd gone over and borrowed it, but we were also getting to a point of getting hesitant about even going and picking up stuff. So, yeah, that's where that whole thing is, Sean. In terms of actual first impressions, I really enjoyed Architects, as we've talked about recently in the double take and the review. Raiders, I thought that mechanic was better done by Coldwater Crown, but I haven't played either that or Coldwater Crown since. So maybe I didn't like either of those games all that much. But this is definitely in my sweet spot in terms of weight of game, style of game. I like the artwork. I like the look of it. I like a lot of what occurs in this series. So going in, I was optimistic that I would really like this, especially hearing from some people that this was better than Architects. So yeah, that's my starting point with this one, Sean.
So it's interesting you say that. So kind of similar situation. I don't have this game. I'm actually borrowing our buddy Jared's copy. So he brought it to game night, the last game night we had several weeks ago. got in our first play, and I said, "Hey, are you going to be here next Wednesday?" Because I know he's traveling. And he's like, "No, I can leave the game with you." I'm like, "Great, I'll get plays of it at home with Raquel, and I'll get like another game of it in on the next Wednesday." And of course, that was going to be the last Dukes of Dice game night. And so I played it at 4 players in my initial play, and then I've played it twice since with Raquel at 2 players. Never got a chance to play this in at 3 players, which is too bad because that's typically where I like this style and weight of game. But yeah, I mean, kind of the same situation. I was like, "Oh, well, okay, thanks, COVID-19."
Yep.
So
Could have taught Chewy how to play. See how that went.
whew, yeah, we'll work up to that.
All right. So, rulebook. I did not have to learn this one from the rulebook. I was taught. I didn't have to look anything up in the rulebook. So I have absolutely nothing to say on the rulebook. Sean, how is the rulebook for you?
So yeah, Jared taught the game, and I have the rulebook in front of me right now. So I didn't have to learn it from the rulebook. I think that it's probably fine. I think it's probably a fine rulebook to learn the game. It's not great for referencing. They are just using a typical paragraph style. There's plenty of pictures, and there's some examples. There's some key points highlighted in blue text, and that's nice. But I really dislike the structure of just putting paragraphs on page. I really like it when there's a little bit more breakdown of stuff. Things are boxed out differently. Like a lot of the Z-Man games and a lot of the What's Your games, a lot of times are, I think, the pinnacle of rulebook design. And this is not that. So
Fair enough. Well, that's a quick one. Let's talk about art and components. I mentioned kind of in my first impressions that I really like the art style of this. And yeah, I mean, that holds true with this game. I think it tends to be, I like the stylized nature of it. It's crisp, it's clear, it's decent iconography. Because there are so many different types of icons in this game, it can take a little bit to learn it. I can imagine this would be an absolute nightmare if you were colorblind. I'm not sure if the colors are optimized for that or not, but it seems like there are enough icons where the color of what you're seeing there matters, and the shapes are not there to differentiate, if my memory serves. But
Correct.
I'm not colorblind, so it was fine for me. I think everything kind of locked into place really well. Everything kind of has a nice little home. It is one of those games that takes a little, there's a good amount of setup to it. I wouldn't say it's an overwhelming amount of setup. There's an overwhelming amount of fiddliness with the in between round setups. I generally found myself pleased with what was going on as far as resources and what was going on with that. I don't have anything super negative to say. I like how the icons were laid out. I think it all made a good amount of sense to me. What about you, Sean?
Yeah, so the illustrations here were done by Mahalo Dmitrievsky, and then Shem Phillips himself did the graphic design and layout. And yeah, I really like the art style too. It's the same art style, and I think it's the same illustrator from the other games in the series. And yeah, it's an interesting. It's this like kind of cartoony, but also like gritty look. I think I like it a lot. I think it looks good. And I think for the most part, the graphic design is really good. I think that the iconography is really good with one exception. And this is the same thing that they did at least in Architects of the West Kingdom. And it's the distinction between money that you get from the supply and money that you get from the taxes. Basically, the money from the supply is gold. Money from taxes that you would get is a slightly redder gold.
Yep.
And it's, if they're right next to each other, the difference is clear.
Sure.
If they're not right next to each other, 80% of the time, 70% of the time, I could still be pretty sure, but you're still like, hold on, let me double check, right? And it just seems like a weird choice, especially for colorblind, especially for, I don't know, some sort of different iconography, some sort of actual different symbol or a big T on it. I don't know. And I'm not sure why they continue to make that choice, because I know that we talked about that when we talked about Architects of the West Kingdom.
Right.
And I know I had seen that complaint online as well. And so you would have thought that maybe they would have considered that when putting this out. But what I would say too is there is consistency. There's a lot of I talked about shared DNA between this and the other games in the series, and there absolutely is. You're acquiring cards in certain ways that are similar; they're not the same. You're dealing with debts in ways that are similar, maybe not exactly the same. But there's shared iconography that if you've played the other games in the series, you're going to be able to pick this game up a lot more easily.
No doubt. Yeah.
So.
No, certainly having played other games in the series, it put me in a better position to do that. And yeah, I 100% agree with you on the taxes thing. A little icon, a little symbol, something in there. You could have done that with the workers too, potentially, to differentiate for folks who are colorblind. Just the thing that could have happened. It didn't super bug me, but there were definitely one or two occasions in my play of this where I mixed up those two between whether money came from the supply or came from taxes. So yeah, that's a point well taken for sure. I will say too, Sean, in terms of organization, there were times when I would accidentally put cards back when I wasn't supposed to, but I don't think that was the game's fault. I think it was just more me being dumb. So
sure.
Yeah.
And then I'll make one more point. These are kind of smallish boxes. I'm doing a quick measurement here of the rule book. Is this it's either 6x6 or 7x7? 3, 4, 5, 6. I think they're 6x6.
Okay.
So the box is probably a little bit bigger than that because the rule book fits like right in the box. So it's like a 6x6 by maybe 3 inches deep, I think.
Yeah, it's a deeper box, I think.
So it's a tight fit. It's a very tight fit when you just have stuff in bags. And I feel like I remember that being the same for Architects and I think for Raiders of the North Sea, but I'm not sure. So that's a little frustrating. We don't typically talk much about box size or complain much about box size, but I do know that when you're really struggling to fit everything in the box and there's no additional storage or components that are taking up extra space, it's just the bags and the pieces. That's a little annoying, but this is the box size they've kind of chosen to go with. And so for branding and consistency, they're sticking with it. So it is what it is.
All right. Yeah, not a ton else to say here. I mean, it's for the most part fairly functional. Definitely does a lot with a little bit of space as far as that box goes. It didn't strike me as having Tokyo Metro type issues with that, but
sure.
I agree with you. It's a tight fit for sure.
Sure.
Let's talk gameplay. And I think the big question I think a lot of folks are going to have with this game is, should I get Architects? Should I get this? Are they different enough? Is one better than the other? What are your answers to those questions, Sean?
I think that I enjoy Paladins more.
I would think you would. It seems more of a Sean game to me.
But I think that in some ways, Architects is the more novel game. The mechanic is more novel. I feel like a lot of what we're doing in Paladins, I get a similar sense from a game like Orleans with that recipe fulfillment. And I think I would rather play Orleans than this game. Whereas I can't point to another analog for Architects as readily as I can for Paladins.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
It does make sense.
Okay. Good.
You're still thinking. Yeah. So I will say this. What's interesting about Architects is that it's an engine building game to some degree where people can destroy your engine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Paladins doesn't necessarily have that effect. There's sort of that same worker placement-y, especially with the common action spaces that pop up as the rounds go by. There's a competition for those, some of which can be determined just by pure turn order, because some of those actions are so undeniably, unbelievably good that you'd have no choice but to take them if you were first, you would think. So there's some interaction there. There's some of a race of trying to get your thing out to the board so that it can score, or a race to get this to convert this person because they get me end of game points that will help me out best. That's the interaction. It is that typical kind of worker placement interaction. It's not really negative timing in Architects because it doesn't affect when game ends so much. It sort of does, but um, there's that interaction of, okay, you're too big. I'm roping all your people and taking them. There is that interaction of with debt, not with debt, with
Suspicion.
Yep. If I have too much suspicion, then I want to be aware and time it so that people aren't stealing too much or aren't trying to get me stuck with debt and lose out on things as a result of that. So there's interaction here, Sean. I wouldn't say it's as intense. Not that Architects is an intense game, but it isn't quite as vigorous of an interaction as it is in Architects. And I'd agree with you. The novel concept on this isn't quite as novel. But that being said, I do enjoy this game a bit more. There's a lot of interesting stuff, and at least for me, opportunities to feel clever with how you're building, how you're managing workers, how you're making the most of what you get over the course of the round. Okay, I'm drafting these 4 to go along with this card that I picked. I saved this card for later because I know I'd want to upgrade these things at a later time. How am I going to get the most out of this? How am I going to max things out? How am I going to get to the higher scoring tiers in all of these different areas? Am I going to focus on building up my fortified wall? Am I going to focus on grabbing the different vases? What one-time bonuses am I going to take? In what order? Trying to set yourself up to kind of make the most out of your turn and extend your turn as long as makes sense is an interesting puzzle. And when do you clear your board? When do you have the opportunity and want to do that? When is it based off of the paladin that you pick? When does it make sense to really go all in on this specific thing? There are a lot of different interesting decision points. It does feel slightly more of a solitary kind of game at times for that reason, but I enjoyed it anyway. For me, Sean, I only played this at 3 players, and that felt like the right count.
Yeah.
I don't know how the difference between 2 and 4 was for you, but I feel like I'd want to play this at 2 or 3 and not at 4, just based on game length, which someone in the guild speaks to a little bit later on. How did you feel about that in terms of player count?
I didn't mind it at 4, but like I mentioned before, just about any midweight Euro I feel tends to play best at 3, and there are certainly exceptions, but that's just generally my feel. So I didn't hate it at 4 by any stretch of the imagination. I agree with you. It was an interesting puzzle, and you had kind of mentioned that there was. Did you say it was fiddly in certain points?
I didn't, but I'd agree with that characterization.
Okay, so it's interesting because the first decision of the turn is which of the 3 cards from my deck, which of the 3 paladins, am I going to select, and also which one am I going to put on the bottom of my deck, which early on means you may see that paladin again. Later in the game, it means I'm never going to see that paladin again. And how are you prioritizing the 3 things that they're giving you, right? They're giving you 2 colors of workers. They're giving you bumps in 2 of your attributes, temporary bumps. And then they're giving you some sort of game-breaking special ability. So like, for example, the develop action, which lets you place houses on your worker spots on your board to make those spots cheaper, normally costs you $4, which is not cheap. But then there's a paladin that lets you develop for 2 less, which is pretty good. And if you can develop multiple times in that turn and really get some value out of it, hey, that's really good. So there's a hard decision there of, okay, which of the paladins am I picking and based on what, and how is that going to affect my turn? But then you have to decide which one am I shipping away for a while or permanently if it's later in the game. To me, that seemed like an unnecessary decision point. I wasn't crazy about it because it adds a little bit of AP. And then you have to decide, okay, we've picked our paladins. Now, which of the extra workers, the 4 worker cards that give different colors to you, which one of those am I going to take in turn order? All right. And then you do your turns. So I don't know. It seemed like a lot of setup in between rounds. And while the decisions were interesting, there seemed to be some superfluous, unnecessary decisions kind of built in for whatever reason. So,
okay.
And feel free to disagree.
I do disagree.
Okay.
I find the fiddliness of this game there's some of that kind of baked into the setup, but I like that decision point with the Paladins. I like that, hey, I'm going to save this one for later. We played with the expansion cards thrown in. I don't know if expansion or Kickstarter cards, So we played, I don't know if you drew 2 and then kind of picked 1 to keep and 1 to do whatever, or you drew 3 and picked from. I think the rules slightly different with how we were playing with it. We also had access to some other ones with interesting powers. There was one that lets you reuse a previously used Paladin, which I used to get develop actions very, very early and often in the game that I played. Helped set me up for success. So I'm trying to think back on this. The round setup to me was not super fiddly. I like the decision points there. The fiddliness sometimes came in, though, with grabbing workers, adding them, having them in a pool, having resources in different places, having cards in different stacks, keeping suspicion, throwing away certain suspicion, keeping money cards, not throwing, that sort of thing was where the fiddliness crept in for me. Those early round decision points, I didn't find too bothersome personally.
And it's for me, it was just an issue of it's a lot of work relative to what you're getting out of it.
Okay.
So obviously I play games that are way more fiddly. I mean, you want to talk about whether or not you can activate a certain headquarters in a certain unit in Empire of the Sun, and it's this terrible calculation that is just horrible, but it doesn't bother me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
fiddliness to depth ratio. We got to come up with some sort of name for that. We got to coin a term for that. A fiddliness to depth ratio.
I like that.
What is it? What is this going to be called? The something ratio.
Yeah. All right. Let's Guild, help us out. Help us out,
okay.
Guild.
Yeah, Guild, name. This is an assignment. This is your homework for when you're stuck at home, is to come up with some term that communicates a high fiddliness to depth ratio. So in other words, I'm trying to think of a game that would be super fiddly, with maybe Takenoko would actually fit the bill for this. Super fiddly relative to its depth.
No. Hold on.
There's got to be a better example.
No. First off, no one would consider Takenoko fiddly except for you.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why.
I knock over the bamboo towers all the time in that game.
Oh, I was going to say something else. You're consistently unable to draw the correct number of tiles.
Oh, that's also true.
You would just your meaty paws would just grab 8 tiles. You're like, that's 3, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you doing?
So
that's why you think it's fiddly.
So the fiddliness to depth ratio. Oh, I'm trying to think. It could just be as simple as the number of hours a game takes divided by its BGG weight rating. And it's more of a feel thing.
No, I think you have. Okay, so you have to come up with a name for this scale and the means by which you determine it. I would suggest that you just rate something from fiddliness from 1 to 5, 5 being super fiddly, and then complexity 1 to 5, and then it's just the ratio of
those two things.
Right. So for example, I would give this a 3 fiddly.
Yeah.
And then a 2 depth.
Okay.
Right?
Got it.
So it's not terrible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you.
If you're 5 to 2, don't play that game. That sounds terrible.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think of what a 5 to 1 would be.
Oh, man.
That would be really rough. And is there a 1 to 5? Is there a game where setup is and play is not very fiddly at all, but the depth of the game is insane? I would argue that Motainai could come close on that one. I think it's part of why we like Motainai, because it's just a deck of cards, right? There's not a ton of other setup to it. There's no deck seating. You just shuffle. You flip the 2 things to determine turn order. And although the movement of cards is not the easiest sometimes, and counting actions is not the easiest, so it's not a 1 on fiddliness. It's probably not a 5 on depth either. But I'd say it might be a 2 fiddliness, 4 complexity.
Yeah, 2 to 4.
2 to 4 I think is fine. But hey, that's good. If you're outscoring it on depth by 2, I think that's really solid.
Yeah, it's a 2 to 4 on the Ramirez Goldsmith scale. Ramirez first. Very important. Very important.
Come on. Everyone knows it would be better as Goldsmith Ramirez anyway.
Oh, wait a minute. To
To
correspond with the order of fiddliness to depth, it would need to be the Goldsmith Ramirez scale.
Wow.
That was a sick burn. That was a sick burn.
I guess. Well, that's fine. I'll call it that, though. I'm trying to look. I'm literally looking at my shelf and assessing where things fit on the fiddliness to depth ratio. This feels like a whole other discussion topic that we're just wasting.
And
we're just wasting it right now.
Let's move away. I will say that I think that analysis probably happens quite a bit subconsciously for me.
Mm-hmm.
And we're kind of now articulating it better. So that's interesting. Only took us 5.5 years, Alex.
Welcome to has a pretty low. All right, sorry. We're delving we're delving way too deep into this, and I actually think it's a good discussion topic. So
yeah, I think so too. Paladins of the West Kingdom.
Yeah.
So we're talking about gameplay. Yeah, so I agree there is additional fiddliness, like you mentioned, because there's a lot of actions where you get bonus workers. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you have to keep all the workers kind of separated, unless you want to go digging through a mixed up pile of workers, which sounds terrible. There's a lot to like here. There is a lot to like. And when I made the reference about the other games in these series, how they're objectively better than I give them credit. Well, not that I give them credit for, but then I like them. Again, I think that's going to apply here. I think this is a good game, and I think this is probably my favorite of all of the games in the series. But the end result is simply it's not going to have any sort of staying power for me. It's not something I'm going to want to bring out again a bunch. I feel like I'm jumping ahead to final thoughts here.
Yeah, pretty much.
But that's not to say there isn't a lot to like. There is a lot to like in this game, and there are moments you can feel clever. But there's engine building, but I didn't necessarily feel that there was a lot of tension in this game. Again, yes, you mentioned trying to get to either convert or attack certain cards before others, trying to get the little buildings and the little monk out on the shared player board to get certain bonuses first. But I didn't feel like there was a lot of tension, and this did feel very multiplayer solitaire-y to me.
Okay. Yeah, I concur with you that there's definitely that feel to it. You're still, at least for me, I'm still watching what other people are doing and seeing how I'm stacking up and competing and doing my best.
Sure.
But the interaction, I think, to me, is just slightly lacking compared to what I would really, truly love as a game. So it falls a little short there. Sean, I'm sure you didn't have an issue with this, but at least for me, trying to keep track of thresholds and where they are, and making sure I'm legally able to do a move, legally able to grab one of the vases, or legally able to build on this section of fort, or legally able to grab this specific thing. That was something that I struggled with the most in this game, and it was something that fellow players I was playing with, who were both pretty experienced gamers, had issues with as well. Is that something that you've bumped into?
I don't think so, because I think for the most part, I had most of my turn mapped out from the beginning.
Sure.
And so I knew, or from the beginning of a turn, right? I knew this is what I'm trying to do. There's not a whole lot of ways to get that plan interrupted unless someone is they're attacking or they're converting a card that I wanted to do first, for example, which does kind of go against what I was saying where it's multiplayer solitaire, because I am looking like maybe there's this higher threshold card that I'm planning on attacking so that I get a particular worker bonus that I need to do something else. I'm certainly looking at every other player's board. Does their strength rather, or their faith threshold reach that level where they can potentially get it before I can, right? So that's something I'm certainly looking out for. So while I wasn't struggling with, do I meet that threshold? I was probably struggling with, do other players meet that threshold? Because you have your tracks, which are pretty easy to see across the table, but it's not as easy to then see what the temporary bonus to those tracks are from that Paladin card is giving you. So then you're asking players, and then they're like, oh, why are you asking? Oh, I bet you it's because of this reason or that reason. So yeah.
Sean, I got a little distracted, as I tend to.
Just now, or?
No, just now. I heard what you said.
Oh.
But in terms of, I thought of a perfect game that is 1 on the complexity side and 5 on the fiddliness side.
Okay. You've got it reversed, though. You got to talk about them in the right order.
Oh, sorry. 5 on fiddliness, 1 on complexity, which is bad. It is a high fiddliness to depth ratio, a high Goldsmith Ramirez score, or whatever we're going to call it. This might be like hard 12, where it just immediately changes to something better and less problematic. So Mousetrap, the classic game Mousetrap.
Uh-huh.
Sean, guess what Mousetrap has as a score on BGG?
Oh, 3.
Nah, it's higher than that. It's a 4.1.
Okay. Pretty close, pretty close.
But its weight score is a 1.12, so I think safe to say a 1. And I don't know about you, but when I was a little kid building that whole complex thing, I would knock things over. It was a mess. So 5-1 on Paladins to Depth. Perhaps an unbeatable score on this front.
We'll call it, how about it's the GR scale?
That's what I had that thought too, the GR scale.
And it makes sense because it's like grrr. Like if higher it is, grrr.
Yeah, the more upset you are. Yeah, you want to score below 1 on the grr scale. If it's
Right.
less than 1, your game is elegant. I'd say we'd call it elegant if it's in that category. And if it's
Sure.
the other way, it's frustrating. Man, we're wasting a great discussion topic.
You've got to flatten the curve of the coronavirus and of the GR scale.
Oh man. This is actually really cool. Okay. That's all I had thoughts on gameplay. Theme, Sean, did you get into this theme? We talked about how it's somewhat problematic to a degree.
Yeah, I mean, you're crusaders. I don't know.
I like how the different village people can interact on some of those fronts where
Like the construction worker and the Native American and
yes, and the Indian chief and
I think they're called townsfolk.
Yes, thank you.
The police officer.
Right.
Is there a biker?
There is a biker. Yep. So, Sean, on
Hold
another
on.
tangent.
Wait. Let me do my tangent first.
Okay.
I feel like we're just not into this review right now, like at all. And I apologize to all of our listeners. I think there's something about the game itself, which isn't like you like it more than this review is suggesting.
Oh yeah.
Your interest
for
in
sure.
the review is suggesting. But I think this whole situation is just weird. I don't know. So
Okay. What came to mind for me, Sean,
yeah.
is the movie Can't Stop the Music. Have you heard of this movie?
I don't think so.
It has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 7%. It was it's the Village People biopic.
Oh, okay.
Starring Bruce, now Caitlyn Jenner, and the Village People and other folks. And I've watched it, and it is horrific and hilarious in how horrific it is. But I believe the biker is called something like Leather Daddy or something along those lines. Anyway, there's an official name for that particular Village People character.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway,
All right.
I'd recommend watching it. Not because it's good, but just because it's interesting. And I like interesting. They have a whole Village People song on milkshakes. Do the shake. Do the shake.
I'm sure it's about milkshakes.
Do
Alex.
the milkshake. Do the shake. No, so this is a plot point of the movie. They get hired by the Dairy Council to produce an ad promoting milkshakes.
Right.
I'm not even joking. That's what happens in this movie. Anyway, yeah, we are way off track, and I think you're not wrong. So the thing I was thinking of though were things like thieves or other folks that you can hire that have effects on your ability to get away with suspicion. I think priests are especially good at absolving you of suspicion. Those kinds of things were interesting thematic touches and worked well in my mind. I don't know. We're past it. Let's talk about guild thoughts.
No. Hold on. I think it is a fairly thematic game. I think
Yes.
it's one of those Euro games where all of the actions make sense, right? I talked about it a little bit earlier where having, going and attacking these cards is going to give you reputation, whereas going and converting them is going to give you strength. Like that makes sense. All of the actions, because there's like an input and an output, like you have to meet a certain threshold of this attribute, and then the end result is a couple things, and then increases this other attribute. And they all make a certain amount of sense. So it is thematic. Problematic theme, yeah. I mean, I would play a war game about the Crusades, but there's something different between like a war game and a Euro game in my mind. Like the war game is still exploring. I don't know. Okay, that's a whole nother subject. Anyway.
Yep. Another discussion topic. You were almost wasted there.
Yep.
Man.
All right. Thoughts.
Guild thoughts. BJ from Board Game Gumbo says, I have only one play, a very speedy play at the end of the last Gumbo night before the coronavirus changed the world. Of the 3 games I've played in the series, I think Explorers is my favorite, but likely because it is the one that I played the most. Paladins certainly feels deeper, and of the 3, it is the one that I want to play again next. So I'm intrigued enough to give it an early high 3 heading toward a 4.
Interesting. If someone came to me and said, hey, Sean, do you want to play Raiders of the North Sea? And they're like, I really want to play Raiders of the North Sea. I might say, what if we played Paladins? Have you played Paladins? And if they were like, no, I haven't. I'm like, oh, well, if you like Raiders, I really think you'll like Paladins, because I feel like I would enjoy playing Paladins more than some of the other games. So I can kind of see BJ's point there. So, all right, Ben Coberly says, I actually just played Paladins a few weeks ago at the last game night before social distancing. I had high hopes for it, as I had heard that it was the heaviest of all the previous games. Looking at the board and reading the directions, my brain saw a lot of choices, quick turns, and cool potential combos for engine building. Sadly, upon playing, the reality was that it took everyone so long to take their turns. You basically have to spend time planning out your entire round at the beginning of your turn, but because things can potentially change during the round, you might pivot 1 to 2 times during a round, or all of a sudden see a new move you didn't consider before and have to rethink everything. The game took almost 4 hours, which made it a miserable gaming experience, but a fun evening with friends, where I'd rather have played 2 games. I really did enjoy what it did, but will likely never play it again due to this, at least not at 4 players. So at 1 play, with 4 players, I'd put this at a 2 on the Ducal scale, but with room to move up. Shout out to Jongular, also known as Jeff Dial, who's a listener and brought this over to teach and play. And I should point out that we rate things here on a 6-point scale.
Yep.
A 2 is really not good. A 2 is game has some merit, but has significant issues. Yeah, I think a 4-hour play of this is not great. And I'm trying to think back how long my 4-player play was.
My 3-player play of this was nowhere close to that. It was at most 2 hours. It was probably just a shade under that. I hate to say this, Ben. It sounds like it's a game group issue and not a game issue. But I don't want to blame the player instead of the game. I'm just saying, at least for me, I didn't find myself planning out my entire turn. I'd find myself planning out, I want to try and generally accomplish these things, and then I'd have to pivot as circumstances would change. But I wouldn't plan out my whole turn.
I planned out my whole turn.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah, and my turns were very quick. And I did notice there were some long turns for some of the other players.
Raquel specifically?
I'm thinking in our 4-player game mostly.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Raquel in that 4-player game?
No, she wasn't. But yeah, her turns were long. But that's not. I mean, that's somewhat typical. And so yeah, I tend to plan out, and every now and then my plan would be thwarted, and I was able to pivot. So
nice.
But yeah, 4 hours. Yeah, that's not good. I think our 4-player game was probably 2.5. It might have inched closer to 3, but that was with 3, or sorry, that was with everyone's first play, except for Jared, who I think he said he played solo. I can't remember. But anyway, moving on.
Don Gilstrap says, I have had Paladins on myself since the Kickstarter delivered and have played it once. I really enjoyed it, but other games, including Architects, keep taking precedence. In my regular gaming group, 2 of us prefer Architects and another prefers Paladins. It really has to do with how you're wired. That said, I got my wife and kids to play Architects during these cloistered times, and I think I might just challenge myself to get them to play Paladins. You're a braver man than me, Don, because I think Architects could be fine for Abby, but Paladins for some reason feels like it would be just a bit much, and I don't know why I'm feeling that way. I think it might be just the visual of how many different areas and cards and different spaces there are has me think that could be a little overwhelming. But I hope it goes well. Yeah, I don't know.
Francois Meilly, I think I said that correctly, Francois.
I don't think you did. I don't think you did at all.
Meilly, I think that's correct. Maill.
No.
I don't think you pronounced the L's.
Francois Meilly?
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I'm doing my best here, everybody. He said that Paladins is more deep than Architects or Raiders. It offers a nice twist on the Orleans gameplay. It could be a brain burner and is definitely more on the multiplayer solitaire game. The turns are snappy enough that it doesn't really matter at a low player count, but with 4, it has the same problem that Grand Austria Hotel or Underwater City does. When it's not your turn, there's nothing to do. I must say that with the COVID crisis, the solo mode is really well done and challenging, a high 4 on the Ducal scale. And, I really regret not having tried the solo. Like, the perfect opportunity with everything going on. So,
yeah, if I'd snapped up a copy and had it handy, I could have done that too. But I didn't. Now, Sean, I have another thought on the GUR scale.
Okay.
Does setup and breakdown weigh in? Does that count as part of things?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Then First Class has a big issue on the GUR scale. Anyway, going on to Sylvain Lacroix. I played only 3 times, but I liked the game. It offers interesting choices with the different colors of meeples and can be a bit of a brain burner at first. However, there is limited interaction. Most of the time I don't mind, but in that case, it really felt like multiplayer solitaire. Coming from Architects that had an incredible amount of interaction, Paladins is still a fun and interesting game. However, if I'm honest, even if it's a good game, it falls into 3rd place after Architects of the West Kingdom and Raiders of the North Sea, probably a low 4 for me. And I would say if I had to mentally rank them, Architects and Paladins are pretty close to each other. I do like a bit of the more interaction that comes about in Architects, but the depth and decisions that you have in Paladins, I appreciate too. We'll talk about this in final thoughts. Anyway.
And then Steve Paltrineri says, I wanted to love Paladins, being a huge fan of Architects. He gives it a 6 on the Ducal scale. And Raiders of the North Sea, which he gives a high 5. But after a few plays, I'll just say that I like it a lot. It's definitely a meatier game than the others, but with that, unfortunately, comes more AP and just more length in general. The length isn't really a bad thing. I don't mind longer games, but it cuts down the situations where I can actually get this one played. That being said, I can't imagine how it took someone 4 hours to play this game. Our 4-player games have been about 2 hours, maybe 2.5 at the most. But even then, when you compare it to Architects, which we can usually pump out a 5-player game in about 45 minutes and have a similar feeling experience, it's hard to imagine that this will get a ton of plays. But I like it a lot, and it's a very good 2-player game, so I'll give it a high 4.
Well, Sean, that leaves us at our final thoughts on this one. You want me to go first with this one this time?
No, let me go.
Okay.
I'll go first here. And because mine will just be down and dirty, in and out. Here we go. I'm going to give it a 3. So again, we rate things on a 6-point scale. A 1 is poorly designed but playable, not necessarily fun. 6 is an all-time favorite that's a contender for the top 10. This is a 3. Game is okay, not exciting, we'll play in the right situation. Now, like I've been saying multiple times, if you are not quite as down in the dumps on midweight Euros as I am, it probably, that score could be up a point, maybe 2 for you. I don't know. I think it's worth trying. I think it's worth playing. But yeah, it's just going to be a 3 for me.
Okay.
Game is okay, not exciting. We'll play in the right situation. And I'll say this: I'd rather play this than Architects. I'd rather play this than Raiders of the North Sea. Although with Architects, I feel like the underlying mechanic is a little bit more interesting. And so if you're looking for something novel that's not the coronavirus, then you might want to go with Architects.
Ugh.
It's a good joke.
It was not.
It's the novel coronavirus.
I know what the joke was. It just wasn't a good joke. I gagged a little bit just hearing that just now. So, all right, Sean, I initially gave Architects of the West Kingdom a 5 before dropping it into the range of a high 4 on the double take, if I remember the double take, which was fairly recent and I should remember. So I'm going to go with that's probably right. And I think with more plays of this, I'd have more clarity on whether I liked this or Architects better, because I have played Architects multiple times, even post-review. And this one I've only played just once. I want to play it more, so it's certainly not as low as a 2 or even a 3. This style of game is the kind of style I enjoy. I enjoy and appreciate that it has a little more depth than Architects. I love some of the decision points. The Paladins are really interesting. But I just don't know if it, again, yeah, that lack of innovation compared to something like Architects. I don't know. There's pros and cons to both. Where that leaves me is at a 4.5, but I can't give out a 4.5 because you'll get upset with me, so I'm just going to go with a high 4 from now, with the chance that it could rise on a double take or it could fall slightly on a double take. it's sort of, I'm straddling a little bit now, but an initial impression for me on this is a 4.5 or a high 4, as you'd like. So there you go. That's our review of Paladins of the West Kingdom. A solid, it's better than this score, but it is what it is, 3 from Sean, and I haven't played this very much, but I like it so far, 4.5 or high 4 from me. All right, Sean, this week for a discussion topic we're not wasting, a pretty comprehensive one that talks about the world of gaming with COVID-19. And we got a ton of great guild thoughts on this, which we'll get to in a second. But there's sort of with any of these kinds of things that affects just about everyone, there's there's kind of a micro and a macro. There's the what's going on in the gaming world as a whole and what's going on individually as gamers. So, Sean, for you, as a gamer in this hobby, in this space, how has this affected you? How have you been getting your gaming fix in? What has this looked like so far?
So I have played a ton of stuff online. We've had 2 online Dukes of Dice game nights, I suppose. So Wednesday nights is our normal game night. We've had 2 Wednesday nights where we played, let's see here. I played with Matthew and Matt, the Wham Boys. We played on Board Game Arena, Russian Railroads, and Signori, one of my favorite What's Your games. We also played Red 7. We've been playing a lot of Red 7. And then the next couple days after that, Friday, I was supposed to fly out to San Diego for my buddy Mitch's wedding. But of course, that got canceled. And so I still had kind of planned to have the day off. This was before things had gotten super crazy, and I kind of wish I hadn't taken the day off. But we played, I met up with Andy and Ellie, my buddies from Phoenix, and we played Madeira. We played For Sale. We played more Red 7. We played Coup. We played Can't Stop. We played Russian Railroads. Like, it was pretty nuts. Then on Sunday, Alex, I took the family to Empire. What? How is that possible, you might ask? Well,
yeah, because this is I think actually a big headline because this happened since the last recording.
Right.
But not to anyone's surprise, Empire is closed. Empire has been shut down, and as best I can tell from their posts, they've been doing a lot of game deliveries of their current stock into the community and doing their best to stay connected, but it's shut down, which is crazy. It's such an institution. It's such a gathering place, such a focal point for the hobby in that community. Miniature Market here in St. Louis is shut down. That happened on a Saturday. It happened Saturday, and we were kind of on that side of town right before the stay-at-home order went into effect on Sunday, and we're going to go by, but found out they were shut down. So that part of that business is closed. So yeah, we'll talk about this more on the macro side, but that those focal points are shut down. In any case, back to you. You went to Empire, and how did you do this, Sean?
Well, I have a key to Empire.
Okay.
And so no one was there. Rory said, bring the family. He's got the bleach out so we could make a little bleach solution, wipe everything down. So we had 2 tables. We only were touching those 2 tables and chairs. The kitchen had been cleaned down. So we actually had access to make sandwiches and desserts that were there because basically everything's going to go bad, right? Because it's going to be shut down for the indefinite future. And so we played some games with Chewy. We played My First Castle Panic, which is one of her favorites. And then we played Hardback. Is that Tim Fowers?
That sounds right to me.
Tim Fowers deck building game.
I'll double check that. But was that your first time playing Hardback?
No, I played a couple times before.
Oh, okay. I like Hardback a lot.
Yeah, Hardback's quite good. And then Raquel and I played Lorenzo e Il Magnifico, which is just fantastic. And then this last Wednesday had another online game night with Matt and Matthew and Andy, or no, sorry, not Andy, Ellie. Sorry, Ellie. And then also Eugene. And we played Innovation. We played Roll for the Galaxy. We played 7 Wonders, more Red 7. I've actually gotten in more gaming since all this stay-at-home stuff, all of this, social distancing has gone into effect. I have played more games. I have not played any new games.
Right. That's what I was about to notice. Yep.
Which makes recent plays difficult. But I've played a ton of games that are very high on my list, very, favorite games, which has been pretty cool. It's been pretty sweet. And then on top of that, I said, you know what? It's been a while. I need to relearn how to use Vassal, Vassal. Do you know what Vassal is?
I have no idea.
So it's like this open source program for playing a bunch of different war games, basically. And people will create the modules so that you can play Combat Commander, you can play Empire of the Sun, you can play Tank Duel. It's not a full experience. Like it's more like a tabletop simulator than it is like a board game arena, because it doesn't do things for you. It doesn't know the rules. You have to have the rule book. You have to have the scenario books. It's not a full game because it's an aid to play. It's not a replacement for play in that sense. They don't want people to be able, like, you have to buy Combat Commander to be able to play, because it has how to set up the scenarios, but it doesn't give you all of the scenario specific rules, for example. And GMT is very supportive of that, because you still have to have bought the games. So they're like, yeah, by all means, put the modules up. You have people like game developers and game designers who like work on the Vassal modules because it helps with playtesting. So anyway, long story short, I downloaded it because at some point, Matt Walker and I want to play Tank Duel. He really likes Tank Duel, and we're going to try playing it at some point. And I want to refamiliarize myself with Vassal. I haven't used it in years. I used to play Warhammer 40K solo when I was testing out different army builds, basically. And so I played a solo game of Combat Commander the other night, and it was amazing. It was so much fun. Yeah, it's been pretty interesting. I mean, obviously, this situation is pretty dire. It's a global pandemic. People are getting sick. People are dying. And I don't want to, even when I kind of joked about it earlier, I'm not making light of the situation, just trying to kind of cope with a stressful time. But despite all of it, I have gotten in more plays than ever in the recent past.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I have not gotten many recent plays in. Before this all broke out, Ulm, I'd been playing a lot of Ulm on Yukata, and that game is fantastic. Sean, have you played Ulm yet?
I have not. I have heard very good things about Ulm.
I think that's something we should play together, or should be played at some point in the near future, because that game is really interesting and plays well online. So a lot of my gaming fix, I talked about this in the early going, has been Animal Crossing. That's been a great bonding experience for Abby and I. She is not typically the one to suggest games or play games, turn on my Switch, anything like that. When I woke up this morning, I got out of bed about 10, and she'd been playing Animal Crossing for the last hour before that, just independently. I just turned it on and jumped into it. So it kind of warms my heart. There have been times in my life where I felt like I've kind of tried to force gaming on other people, or certain relationships in the past where that might have felt true. But it hasn't felt that way here. Abby and I have still played a lot of two-player games, nothing new. We've played some of Tides of Time. I cannot beat her at Tides of Time. She literally crushes me every time in Tides of Time. Classic two-player drafting game. Murders me. We've been playing, a lot of Welcome 2. We've been playing a ton of Azul. And my thought process, Sean, is possibly for the next episode, we happen to have been borrowing Jamie Stegmeier's copy of Azul Summer Pavilion. And it's possible that next episode, because as you mentioned, new plays are dicey right now, really dicey. That may be a possible review for next week, but just an Abby and Alex review. So we're brainstorming ways for it to work. But no, I mean, the Dukes of Dice tournament online. I have a friend from work, Bowen, who wants me to download Tabletop Simulator onto my MacBook Air. And apparently you can play Matai on there. I just taught him that recently. So that could be a fun little escape. Possibly playing Vicomte of the West Kingdom, the next one in the series. That's available on Tabletop Simulator. So there are doors that are open in this moment. Jackbox games I've suggested to friends and family, and those have seemed to go over really well. So gaming is still happening, connecting is still happening, but it's definitely very different and difficult for a review show right now. I should mention, Sean, I went and podcast cheated on you.
Oh, boy.
I appeared on the Board Together podcast, which that episode should be dropping this weekend, so fairly close to when this episode comes out. Go and give it a listen. They did something on there, Sean, that I wanted to possibly migrate over to this show. if folks are interested, which is the board game deathmatch, where so you take a category, cooperative games, and then you each snake-style draft games in that category. The games are then thrown into a randomizer and put into a Sweet 16-style bracket, and then you have a debate between those two games, and then everyone has an individual vote. It's a 4-person panel, so if it's a tie, you roll a die to determine which game wins, which game doesn't. And it was an absolute blast doing that, drafting, playing through, and I think we could have a lot of fun with that format on here, possibly bringing them on to guest host and do that with us. So we're finding ways to fill the time. We will survive, so to speak. But the show will definitely look different. I don't think it'll have that same format during this time of recent plays, news, review, double taker, discussion topic. It may be more discussion topic heavy, more review light. Episodes may be shorter. And this one we thought was going to be really short. And it's actually pretty normal length, probably by the time we get done with this. So It is what it is. We'll talk for whatever makes sense to. But that's my sort of micro level. On the macro scale, BGG Store is shut down, much like a lot of other places. They did make a generous offer that if you're a store with extra stock, you can list on the BGG marketplace, and they won't take their typical 3% commission fee.
Oh, wow.
Until this is all over. It's kind of a nice way to support local gamers. Matt Leacock had an article in the New York Times, had an editorial talking about how Pandemic's a cooperative game and you need different skills and whatever else. That's a great read. So gaming's getting attention in that way too. There were a lot of, in the early going of this, some dumb Pandemic jokes, but I'm glad that was sort of pivoted to be something useful, productive, interesting. Yeah, and the other macro part of this, Sean, is every time I stop and think about it, there's something every day where there's an industry affected in some way or a part of life that's affected in some way by this that I didn't realize or didn't have perspective on. Abby and I were walking the other day and I thought, is dating happening right now? Is anyone dating? Are people doing virtual dates? Are people risking it and meeting in parks? I mean, you can't take someone out to a restaurant right now. So does dating just completely come to a halt in this kind of a situation? What businesses are really thriving? Is Grubhub really doing incredibly well? And is that a bounce that can stick around even after this kind of thing ends? How much are our habits changing as a whole? The same question to me comes about with board games. There's certainly still a market for them. People are ordering them to play at home with their families, to pass the time, and I think there's a boost on that front. But for hobby gamers, I mean, how many games have you bought in the last couple of weeks? How many games do you think you'll buy in the next month that you're going to actually buy a physical copy of, have shipped to your house?
Well, before everything started, I did buy a copy of PAX Transhumanity that just arrived.
Oh, hey.
And I'm like, shucks. No, you're right. I mean, part of the problem too is a bunch of the distributors are shutting down their warehouses, right? I mean, in the stores, most of the stores are closed, and certainly people are supporting local businesses like Empire by, I mean, Rory has done these deliveries and has sold a ton of games, making personal deliveries to people's houses. Keeping distance and all of that. I hope people will wipe down the games before they open them.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, for me, I certainly, other than PAX Transhumanity, I haven't had a need to buy anything. GMT, if there are P500 orders that are being fulfilled, or that would have been fulfilled, I should say, those, I think I saw something where those aren't happening because their warehouse is closed down. So yeah, I mean, it's a weird time. And this is, I mean, obviously it's one thing to say, well, it's just gaming and gaming's not important, but we're talking about people's livelihoods. We're talking about store owners. We're talking about employees at distributors. We're talking about game companies.
Publishers.
Publishers. People, they're, running Kickstarters or we're looking to start Kickstarters. People are, I've seen it in my work where people are a lot more hesitant to hand money over because they're not sure what the economic situation is going to look like a week from now, let alone a month from now, 2 months from now. I think people are less likely to put money in Kickstarter. Am I really going to tie up $50 for the next year when, who knows what's going to happen 2 months from now.
I saw a Kickstarter campaign that was set to 65 days as a way to attempt to mitigate that, which Kickstarter best practices typically tell you campaigns of fewer than 30 days have the most success. You don't have people tune out. It's not some sort of long odyssey. But Kickstarter is such a big part of that business model for a lot of publishers. It throws off the big timing of that. And think about this too, Sean. When things come back to full speed, whenever that is, there's going to be a lot of pent-up games that were scheduled to go at a certain time that weren't able to and are now going to clog the calendar. So it's going to crowd out other companies in that moment.
Right.
So that's going to have an effect. I think, again, don't know any specifics, don't have a specific name, but I don't think it's crazy to say, given how many companies are already having a hard time, there will be companies that will shut down, that this is the final straw. They might have been struggling before, but this is the thing that pushes them completely out. So it wouldn't surprise me to see that. I don't think this has an effect on gaming's long-term future, but I will be curious to see by the end of 2020 what the releases look like, whether there are fewer good ones to talk about, whether this is a slow year as far as that goes, not because of quality in the hobby, but simply based on this massive disruption in timing. So it's a lot of unknowns still, but there's some things you can kind of generally predict based on your own behavior. And you think about, to what degree are you willing to spend money on things? To what degree are you buying X, Y, or Z? And then multiply that by however many other gamers, people in the country, and it gives you at least a sense of what's likely to be happening. And I think it's bad news for a lot of people, but I think in the hobby, it's when you're talking about an in-person activity, it's difficult. It's difficult,
right?
For sure,
right.
So Guild had a lot of thoughts on this one, Sean.
Yeah,
ton of thoughts. Ben Coberly said, I'm getting in a bunch of plays with my kids. Things like Kingdom.and and Llama. I just received the expansion for Downforce yesterday, so I'm hoping that will get back to the table to try out soon. Also, I had our monthly game night online. We played Keyflower real time through Board Game Arena. I'm in 4 to 5 other asynchronous games online, as well as part of the Dukes of Dice Castles of Burgundy tournament. I don't know if he's been knocked out since that post, but yeah, I'll have to think about that. I might actually get more games played in March than I did in February. I do miss having my friends right across the table, but we still chat online through Slack or other in-game messaging. I'm thinking about getting like 10 copies of Llama and going to drop them off on people's doorsteps with a note offering to teach them through Skype, FaceTime, and hopefully get some new family gamers into the mix by the time this is all over. That's a really interesting idea.
Yeah.
It's an interesting idea. I'm curious how much people would trust on that or would take people up on that offer in this time. Maybe not. I don't know. That's a cool idea. It's a really cool idea.
Yeah, definitely. So Don Gilstrap said, regarding the current state of affairs, I'm feeling lucky that we live in the modern age we do. With a working internet and solid supply lines for essential goods, we're doing okay so far. I've got my wife and kids here for company and have embraced online board gaming and Discord for keeping in touch with others. I did make a point of buying that longed-for copy of Star Wars Rebellion from my friendly local game store before we were all told to stay home. I hope others do similar things for their local small businesses.
Yeah, I think supporting places you care about is important. Abby and I have made a point to support a lot of local restaurants during this time for the ones that are still able to do carry out, take out. There's a place in town, for instance, called Stone Soup Cottage that has been in one of the top 3 restaurants in St. Louis for a long time. It's about a 30, 45-minute drive away from where we live. And they're only typically open Thursday through Saturday. But in this moment, they're doing a kind of deluxe dinner for 2 experience. And so my birthday's coming up I think in between the time when this releases and the next episode. And they have this basically for $150. You get, they bring linens, they bring candles, they bring a custom selected bottle of wine and a 3-course meal. And get that all to you and deliver anywhere within the city. And so we're planning on doing that as sort of a nice little birthday celebration. But where you can, support small businesses. But I also understand the ones that, for practical reasons, are either forced to shut down or just have to shut down. It's a bummer, but it's weird times. Weird. All right. Sylvain Lacroix says, I have to admit that I'm not playing as much as I'd like. I have 2 young children. My oldest one is 8 and barely starting to play. And my wife doesn't play either, so I rely on solo games at the moment. Can't wait to play games with my friends around the table. However, we decided to do something special. I have a YouTube channel in French, and with a few other media channels, whether they be podcasts or on YouTube in Quebec, we're now having live events every day. Around noon, we have some live games like Welcome to, etc. And during the evenings, we talk live with the gaming community about a specific subject, Kickstarter, legacy games, solo games. We interact with the people that watch and comment, and we find out via a few private messages that a few people really find that helpful to deal with their loneliness during these hard times. I'm proud to give back a little to the community, and even if our first few sessions were not really crowded, people start to talk about that, and we're glad to do something special for our fellow gamers. Not a bad idea. Yeah, a little live show could be a thing. We used to do live hangouts more regularly, and I think are still technically obligated to be doing them on a more regular basis. So I don't know, Sean. I thought maybe this whole thing would slow you down in terms of your attorney work, but it has not had that effect.
No, I'm super stressed out. But let me say this. I think what Sylvain's talking about there is pretty awesome because I'm fortunate enough to have a wonderful family that I'm home with, and we all enjoy each other's company. You've got Abby. And I think that there's a lot of people that this may be affecting more than others, especially if they're living alone or they're away from family or whatever. So I think anything you can do to reach out to people and, just check in, everything going good, everything okay, anything we can do, I think is pretty awesome. So.
Well, and I will throw out this offer in thinking about that, Sean. If there is anyone in our listening group, anyone who's hearing us out there in the world, who is feeling that way and wants to connect on a one-on-one basis, I will throw it out there that either you can post on the guild or just send me a private message on PGG saying, "Hey, I'm feeling the strain of this. I'd love someone to talk gaming with for a little bit." I'm more than happy to jump on Yukata, play something with you, talk with you, whatever else. There's time that's opened up in this, and part of it feels weird to call it a duty, but part of what we can provide as content creators is that sense of community. It's been a big core part of the show and what we've tried to build. So if there's any way that this community can be helpful for folks, I'll throw it out there that I'm more than happy to chat with people, meet with people. I always love meeting listeners. It was one of the coolest parts when I was working for Gray Fox Games, when folks would come by booths. So please don't hesitate to let me know. Send a direct message, reach out on Twitter. There's plenty of places you can reach me. Sean may not have the bandwidth for it right now, not because he's a jerk, just because he's really busy. But I definitely do. So, yeah. Anyway, I'll throw that out there as an offer. I think that's a point well taken, Sean. And if you have the bandwidth for things like that too, and are lucky enough to have kind of a supportive family as is, make that effort. This is something, again, we're all in together, and doing what we can, I think, is hugely important. So there you go.
I mean, you've seen the meme or something similar to it where, our grandparents or great-grandparents had to storm the beaches of Normandy to save the world. We just have to sit at home and watch Netflix.
Yeah.
So
fair enough.
Got it pretty easy in that sense. Phil Hendrickson, pretty short and sweet here, says, "My wife said to me yesterday, we should play a different game each day this week. I am a lucky guy."
Yeah, Phil, I think you are a lucky guy.
For sure.
I've had that experience to some degree with Abby with Animal Crossing and other things. So having that partner, it is. I've heard people speculate that this could increase the divorce rate. I don't know. I feel closer to Abby than I ever have, honestly. With this,
as an expert on that subject,
yeah,
it is. It is. I can tell you.
Oh no.
Things are, and it sounds macabre and kind of ghoulish for me to. But yeah, when this is over, I expect to be quite busy.
Oh, well, good for business, I guess.
Yeah.
Interesting. Cool. Sadaranji says, "I've been playing more solo games these days, notably Star Wars Outer Rim and March of the Ants." I haven't heard of March of the Ants. Interesting.
It's an older one, like 10-ish years.
Okay.
8 maybe.
I played a game of Eclipse using Vassal, which you mentioned, and used Discord for chatting. I've been playing games on Tabletopia and Board Game Arena on my iPad. And most importantly, I've been playing games and hanging out with my family, even games like, Pandemic. And it occurs to me, I have Pandemic, and I don't think Abby's played that one ever.
Oh.
I think she'd really like it.
Yeah. You should do that.
Yeah, I should do that. Maybe we'll do that later on. All right. Very cool. Thanks, Sadaranji.
So Nick Hayes has kind of a sad story here. I was finally going to have a long-awaited game day. And let me let everyone know, from what Nick has posted in the guild throughout the last couple months, years, he had to step away from the hobby for a while, and he doesn't get a lot of opportunities to go to game days. So when he says I was finally going to have a long-awaited game day, he means that. The plans were made. My wife was taking my son and going to her parents' house for the day, and my buddies and I were going to have the house to ourselves all day. The games were chosen, and they were all laid out and made ready, and then someone drew an epidemic card with 3 cubes in China, and COVID-19 started wreaking havoc the world over. If it had just been me, I'd probably have gone ahead and had the day if the guys were up to it, but with a young son and a wife, I decided to err on the side of caution, and we're looking at trying to reschedule in a month or two. It was disappointing to say the least, because this was going to be my first time to ever play both Castles of Burgundy and Catan Starfarers. At least, though, I still have it to look forward to, and I can use the time to learn the rules even better. In the meantime, I've been trying some new board game apps on the iPhone to pass the time and to get some gaming in. I downloaded the Castles of Burgundy app, and I'm enjoying it. Also downloaded Tigris and Euphrates, and it's blowing my mind. I still haven't figured it out yet. Yeah, Tigris and Euphrates, that's a rough one. It's good stuff, but it's rough. It's certainly rough. So, yeah, I've been, my iPad, which I used to always have charged, has kind of gone to the wayside the last couple months or so. I've been charging it because I'm planning to play some more app stuff, but Chewy keeps grabbing it. And
womp womp.
You womp womp. Yep.
Steve Paltrineri says, hey, nothing too creative here. I have 2 small kids, so my time is limited. I certainly miss my weekly gaming meetups, but I've been playing more solo games and been meeting up with friends on Board Game Arena, Jinteki.net for Netrunner, and a little tabletop simulator. I'm also really happy that I happened to buy Marvel Champions just before all this hit, as that's a fantastic solo game. I'm also digging into my backlog of video games. Phoenix Point is amazing. So there you go. So yeah, look, the point of this being, it is having a massive effect, but gaming itself does not stop. If you're in this hobby, you still have that craving, you still have that urge, it's still going to happen. It just looks a little different right now. And the sacrifices, can feel petty or small, but I mean, they can mean a lot. That game day that Nick is talking about, I mean, the amount of preparation and effort to get that all ready to go is no small thing. So it's sacrifices. Everyone to a degree is making sacrifices. Some of them by choice, some of them by force, some of them by other factors, but everyone's going through something in this. So I hope folks can kind of have a thought in their mind for folks who are possibly hit harder than they are. And I also hope folks aren't too afraid to ask for help in moments like this, because I think it's a time where I think we can all potentially be heroes in different ways. So,
sure.
Yeah. That's all I had on this, Sean. Anything you had?
No, that's about it. Certainly interesting times we're living in, Alex. Isn't that the biggest not insult, but worst thing you could wish on someone? I hope you live in interesting times.
Yeah, kind of. It could be. Yeah, fascinating for sure. Abby has started journaling. It feels like it's an interesting way to keep a good historical record, in a sense, of what this time's like, because this feels like something that 50, 100 years from now is going to be pointed to as a moment, as a significant moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it for the discussion topic. Thanks to everyone who contributed. Let's head on over to the best of the rest. And we'll start things off with BJ from Board Game Gumbo, who came up with My Kingdom for a Remedy. And he was specifically referencing the song Remedy, which I'd heard. I don't remember the group who sung it, but he didn't do this in song form, so I'm not singing it. Trust me, there will be time for that a little bit later on. But that was my runner-up this week, personally.
Wait, that was my runner-up too. Hold on, but is it something? Was it a song reference?
Yeah, he had a YouTube clip in there of a song reference.
Oh,
but this isn't a lyric from that song. It's not in time to that. It's the song that's like, "This is the remedy." It's like right,
that
song. Yeah, he referenced that, but it's not really referenced in the title. It's not key to the reference.
It's a Richard III reference. My Kingdom for a Horse.
Yes, it's that too.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, good job, BJ. And yes, that was my runner-up as well. All right, Nick Hayes suggested Pandemics of All the Kingdoms. Which, yep, that's pretty good. That's what's happening.
Scott Briance came with a name that normally, if it's a song-based name, it can have a hard time winning. Usually we just kind of throw these in there as, hey, Alex likes to sing this. But this was a song reference that actually could have been the episode title. This, to me, was probably my third place of the week, if I had to rank them. But the title is Kingdom of Isolation, a line that comes from the, of course, insanely catchy Frozen soundtrack. A kingdom of isolation, and it looks like I'm the queen. There you go.
Good job, Alex.
The rest of these are song references, Sean, so I feel like instead of going back and forth, I just need to read the rest of these.
All you. I'll sit back and relax.
Yep. Joshian Gur came with My Corona, which doesn't really tie into Paladins, as best I can tell, but was a good song reference, I guess, and I did know this song, primarily because Weird Al Yankovic parodied it as My Bologna. So I heard that way before I had heard the original one, which some people will find very sad. And then finally, Don Gilstrap with Shem Shemini, Shem Shemini, Shem Shem Cherie, which had Sean laughing when he saw that in the top 6. So
yeah, that's little Mary Poppins there.
Yeah,
like, referencing Shem Phillips, the designer of Paladins.
Yep. Well, anyway, that's going to do it for this episode of the Dukes of Dice. This strange, weird episode before the episodes will get even weirder, I assure you. Because, hey, new plays are going to be not as much of a thing. Discussion topics may become more of a thing. I think I already know what the discussion topic for next episode probably is. So, yeah, that's going to do it.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for tuning in. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Social distance. Do all those things. This will be it for episode 222, Shut-ins of the Stressed Kingdom. Again, thanks to Jimmy DM90 for that awesome title suggestion. Until next time, this is Sean.
And Alex.
And Duke you later, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on March 28th, 2020. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. And for all the latest in the Duchy, go to DukesOfDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsors, Arcane Wonders and Game Toppers LLC. You can learn more about Arcane Wonders' fine titles at ArcaneWonders.com and find out all you need to know about Game Toppers at GameToppersLLC.com. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Until then, be safe and game on.